Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. There is a place beneath the earth where footsteps echo forever. A place where walls breathe like sleeping giants, where torchlight bends strangely, and where every turn feels like a choice you've made before. This is the Labyrinth, and at its center beats a heart, ancient, restless, and misunderstood. Far above, the night sky glittered over Crete, but deep below, stone corridors hummed with memory. The labyrinth was not merely built. It was grown. King Minos had demanded a prison, a place to hide the shame that carried his blood, yet did not carry his face. A creature born of divine punishment, half man, half bull, feared by the world. The Minotaur. But before he was a monster, he was a child. And before he knew hunger, he knew loneliness. On this quiet night, the labyrinth stirred as he walked its halls. The walls glowed faintly with his presence, recognizing him, their true king. His heavy footsteps echoed like drums. His breath fogged the cold air. His horns brushed the cavern ceiling. Yet in his deep, sorrowful eyes, there was no rage, only yearning. Tonight he felt something ripple through the stones, a tremor like a voice whispering his forgotten name. A new presence had entered the maze. Not an offering, not a sacrifice, not a soldier, a stranger. The labyrinth trembled with anticipation. The Minotaur placed a hand on the warm wall and felt its pulse answer. "Who comes?" he rumbled softly. "To my heart." The halls shifted, guiding the stranger deeper, toward him, toward the truth sleeping at the center of the world. As torches flickered, the labyrinth whispered, "The story begins again." Far above the labyrinth, the night over Crete was calm. Stars flickered softly, but deep below, someone stepped into the darkness. The stranger, with a torch in one hand and a golden thread in the other, he entered the living maze. The labyrinth breathed around him. Its walls were warm, shaped by memory more than stone. He tied the end of the thread at the entrance and walked deeper. Every step echoed with intention. Far away, the Minotaur heard him. A calm rhythm, steady, curious, not like the others. The stranger placed a hand on the wall. "You're alive," he whispered. The labyrinth answered with a pulse, a guiding heartbeat. "Show me the way," and the maze obeyed. The stranger walked deeper into the maze. The golden thread whispered behind him. The labyrinth shifted gently around him. He placed his hand on the warm stone. "You're alive," he whispered. The walls hummed with memory. Far ahead, the Minotaur felt the touch as if it were on his own skin. "You speak to him," he murmured to the labyrinth. A new path opened. The stranger descended into colder, older corridors. The scent changed earth, breath, sorrow. He tightened his grip on the thread. Closer. The Minotaur waited in the central chamber, massive yet quiet, breath steady as stone. When the stranger finally stepped into the chamber, he froze, not in fear, but awe. "You," he whispered. The Minotaur bowed his head gently. "Yes." And for the first time, the meeting of man and monster began not with terror, but with understanding. The torches along the spiraling corridor flickered like dying stars as Theseus descended deeper into the bowels of the labyrinth. The air thickened, not with dust alone, but with a slow, pulsing hum, something ancient and wordless. It vibrated through the stone, through his bones, through the trembling silence that stretched across the winding walls. He paused, listening, not with his ears, but with that inner sense that awakens when one steps beyond the borders of ordinary fear. Down here, sound did not travel as it should. Every footstep seemed swallowed, every breath stolen before it left his lips. Ariadne's golden thread glowed faintly in his hand, a thin line of light swallowed by the suffocating dark behind him. It was his lifeline, not merely back to the surface, but back to the world where the sky still existed. Already the labyrinth felt like someplace cut away from the living earth. The deeper he walked, the more the air changed. It grew warmer, then cold, then warm again, as if the stone itself inhaled and exhaled, a slow giant breathing in its sleep. Theseus placed a hand upon the wall. To his shock, the stone throbbed faintly, like a pulse. The labyrinth is alive, he realized, not in the way a creature is alive, but as a memory is alive, as a curse is alive. He continued forward, and the hum grew louder. Then he heard it, a low, rumbling sound, like a storm trapped underground. A heartbeat, not his, not human, not mortal. The Minotaur. He stepped into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in blackness. Broken pillars jutted out like the ribs of an ancient titan. Shattered mosaics glittered faintly beneath layers of time. Depictions of bulls, of spirals, of sacrifices, the forgotten religion of an older world. The heartbeat echoed again, closer now. Theseus raised his torch and froze. Two enormous horns emerged from the shadow ahead. Then a snout, a breath like hot wind. The creature stepped forward, towering above him. Its body carved from muscle and shadow, its eyes twin embers of tragic fury. The Minotaur, a monster to some, a legend to others, curse to all. But Theseus did not see a mindless beast. He saw grief, grief forged into flesh, a sorrow that had been turned into a weapon. The Minotaur's roar shook the chamber. Stone dust rained from above. The creature charged. Theseus did not raise his sword, not immediately. He watched. He waited. He listened. The creature's movements were not wild, not chaotic. They were rhythmic, bound to a pattern, as though the Minotaur itself were part of the labyrinth's pulse. Their battle unfolded in roaring echoes. Torchlight shattered against horns. Steel flashed like lightning. The Minotaur moved with a fury that had no outlet for centuries. Each clash was a question, each dodge an answer, and then Theseus slipped. A horn grazed his shoulder, tearing cloth and skin. He fell to one knee, the golden thread slipping from his fingers. The Minotaur froze. It stared at the thread, stared at him, and the fire in its eyes dimmed, not with weakness but memory. In that instant, Theseus understood. The Minotaur remembered, not everything, but something, a scent, A face. A mother. Pasiphae. A life stolen before it began. The creature stepped back, trembling, and Theseus whispered, "I'm sorry." The Minotaur roared, not at him, but at the labyrinth that had imprisoned it. The chamber shook violently. The labyrinth was waking, and the battle was no longer man versus monster. It was man and monster against the ancient hunger of the maze itself. The moment the monolith split, the labyrinth began to die. Not quickly, not quietly, but with the slow, thunderous collapse of a god that had slept too long and woken too suddenly. Theseus and the Minotaur sprinted through the shuddering corridor, the golden thread blazing in his hand like a streamer of fire. Behind them, the giant chamber crumbled, pillars falling like wounded giants, mosaics shattering into ancient dust, golden rivers dimming into pools of cooling stone. The maze buckled, cracks split along the walls, zigzagging like lightning trapped beneath the earth. Theseus stumbled as the ground lurched beneath his feet, but the Minotaur steadied him with one immense hand. Not dragging, not forcing, guiding. For the first time since stepping into the maze, Theseus felt truly not alone. They ran through shadowed passages that twisted like wounded serpents. Torches burst one by one under falling debris, plunging entire corridors into darkness. But the thread glowed brighter with every step, sensing the unraveling maze and fighting to guide them to whatever escape remained. A ceiling beam crashed behind them with a deafening roar. Dust and sparks rained down. The Minotaur shielded Theseus with its massive body, taking the brunt of the blow on its back. A pained bellow escaped it, but it pushed forward. And Theseus realized something he had not dared to think. The Minotaur was afraid, not of death, not of pain, but that Theseus might not make it out. The labyrinth groaned again, higher, sharper, like a shriek. "Come on," Theseus urged, grasping the Minotaur's arm. The beast followed, limping, breath ragged, but driven by something far deeper than instinct. It wanted freedom. It wanted an end. It wanted, after all these centuries, to choose its own fate. At last, they reached a vast archway carved with spirals, horns, and broken frescoes depicting ancient rituals long forgotten. Two massive stone doors, partially crumbled, leaned against the walls beside the entrance. Beyond it lay the heart chamber, a colossal cavern unfolded before them, its ceiling vanishing into a swirling vortex of shadow. Rivers of molten gold snaked across the floor like the veins of a buried god. Their light flickered upward, illuminating a monolith at the center of the chamber. The monolith pulsed. Once, twice, a deep, rhythmic throb, like the beating of a distorted heart. And Theseus knew this was the source of the labyrinth's life. Its hunger, its memory. The Minotaur growled, but the sound was not directed at Theseus. It was directed at the stone monolith. A deep, trembling hatred rumbling from within its chest. Theseus stepped forward cautiously. "What is it?" he whispered. The Minotaur struck the floor with its hoof in a burst of anguish. And in that echo Theseus understood. The labyrinth was not merely a prison for the creature. It was its cradle, His cage. His curse. Theseus placed a hand on the golden thread, feeling its warmth pulse through his palm. It reacted to the chamber, flickering brighter than ever before. The thread was not merely a guide through the maze. It was a key, a lifeline, a severing. Theseus stepped closer to the monolith. The stone seemed to absorb light and exhale shadow, its surface swirling with faint, ghostly patterns. Horns, spirals, labyrinthine paths that shifted when he blinked. He reached out. The Minotaur lunged forward, grabbing his arm. For a heartbeat, Theseus froze. But the creature was not attacking. It was warning him. The monolith pulsed violently, sending shock waves rippling through the chamber. The golden rivers trembled. The air shattered with sudden heat. Theseus staggered back. "What happens if I touch it?" he asked quietly. The Minotaur released his arm and lowered its head. And without words, Theseus understood. Touching the monolith would kill him, or worse, it would bind him to the labyrinth. The Minotaur let out a sound so fragile Theseus felt his heart twist inside him. The beast's large, scarred hand brushed the golden thread lightly. It wanted freedom, for itself, for the labyrinth, for the countless souls lost within. Theseus lifted the thread up toward the monolith. As he neared it, the golden light brightened into a radiant fire, threads unraveling into shimmering strands like sunlit hair caught in the wind. The monolith pulsed again, violently enough to crack the stone floor. The Minotaur roared, not in fury, but in determination, and stepped in front of Theseus, shielding him. It was protecting him. Theseus swallowed hard. He felt the heat rising, the golden thread trembling in his grasp. "Together?" he asked softly. The Minotaur looked back at him, and in its ancient, sorrow-heavy eyes, he saw something he would never forget. Acceptance, courage, release. The creature lowered its head in a solemn nod. Theseus raised the burning thread high and brought it down upon the monolith. The chamber erupted. Light and shadow exploded outward in spiraling storms. Golden rivers surged upward in pillars of fire. The monolith split down the center with a deafening crack, releasing a blast of wind that sent both man and monster tumbling to the ground. The labyrinth screamed, not with a voice, with every stone, every corridor, every memory. A heartbeat stopped, and the maze began to crumble. The Minotaur rose slowly, its great chest heaving. The glow that once burned in its eyes flickered softly, and then, for the first time, Theseus saw peace. Not freedom yet, but the beginning of it. He extended a hand. The Minotaur stared at it for a long moment, and then placed its massive palm gently in his. The maze shuddered and began collapsing in earnest. They ran, not as hero and beast, but as two souls who had finally broken the chain that bound them both. The moment they stepped away from the monolith's shattered remains, the labyrinth began its final collapse. Stone trembled in long, grinding shivers. Dust fell in pale veils. Walls, once unmovable, buckled like softened clay. Theseus and the Minotaur rushed through the twisting corridor, the golden thread guiding their path like a sliver of trapped sunlight. Behind them, entire hallways imploded. Pillars fell like uprooted trees. Ancient carvings, centuries old, crumbled into forgotten sand. The maze was dying, but it was not going quietly. A scream rippled through the stone. Not a voice, but memory itself. Every echo of every soul, every lost wanderer, every sacrifice. It all poured through the air like a storm of sorrow. The Minotaur roared back, not in anger but defiance. The ground shook violently. Theseus stumbled, but the Minotaur steadied him, pushing him forward, urging him toward the fading light ahead. They burst into the final corridor. At the far end was daylight. Real daylight. Blue. Alive. Freedom. But the Minotaur slowed. His breath halved. The steps faltered. His body shook beneath its massive weight. A falling stone earlier, heavy, brutal, had struck deep. The wound burned with every movement. Theseus! Ariadne's faint voice called from outside. Far away. Urgent. Theseus, hurry! He turned back to the Minotaur. The creature collapsed to one knee. No, Theseus whispered. No, don't stop. We're almost there. He tugged at the creature's arm. It didn't rise. The Minotaur's eyes, glowing faintly, met his. Go. Not spoken. Understood. The maze shuddered again. Stones rained down. The exit cracked and narrowed. Ariadne! Theseus shouted. It's coming down. He grabbed the Minotaur again. Please, please stand. The beast placed a hand on his chest. Gentle, final, shook its head. Theseus felt something inside him break. I won't leave you, he whispered, voice trembling. The Minotaur nodded toward the golden thread, and then toward the daylight. Theseus' breath hitched. You saved me, he whispered. Let me save you. A soft rumble. Almost a laugh. Almost a goodbye. Another chunk of ceiling fell. The exit shrank, stone grinding against stone. Ariadne screamed his name. Theseus looked at the creature, the monster he had been sent to kill. The soul he had instead come to understand. The friend he had found in the deepest dark. Thank you, he whispered. The Minotaur bowed its head. The labyrinth groaned, its final warning. Theseus turned and ran. The corridor collapsed behind him, sealing the Minotaur inside as he dove through the last sliver of daylight. Silence. Then, a final, thunderous collapse. The labyrinth was gone. Hours later, Theseus stood alone at the cliff overlooking the sea. The moon cast silver paths across the waves. A warm breeze brushed against him. Not earthly wind, not ocean wind, a different wind. Farewell. He closed his eyes. May you find peace, he whispered. The breeze shifted, gentle, grateful, then faded. Theseus wrapped the now dim golden thread around his hand one final time. It no longer glowed. His purpose had ended, but it felt warm, alive with memory. He turned away from the sea and walked toward the campfire glow in the distance. Some myths end in victory, some end in loss, but the greatest end in understanding. And deep beneath the earth where the maze once lay, something like a heartbeat finally rested.